Good afternoon. Welcome to our first NAE 4HA Virtual Professional Development Task Force webinar. My name is Jeffrey Burke, and I serve as the Task Force Chair for the Virtual Professional Development Task Force. And I'm from Georgia, where I serve as the State 4-H Events and Programs Coordinator. We are so excited to have you this afternoon for some professional development on this great Wednesday afternoon. Just a couple housekeeping things as we get started. You'll notice that everyone is muted until later in the webinar when we'll do some Q&A. So you don't have to worry so much right now about your microphone, but we will unmute you later to be able to ask some questions later in the webinar. I have the pleasure of introducing our feature presenter today, who is Joaquina Kankam, the 4-H Extension Program Specialist in the College of Agriculture and Human Sciences at Prairie View A&M University. She's also a member of the NAE 4HA Professional Development Committee's Teaching and Learning Task Force. She's earned a Bachelor of Arts degree in Psychology from Tuskegee University, as well as a Master of Education degree from the University of St. Thomas. And she's currently a doctoral candidate in the Educational Leadership program at Prairie View A&M University. Before working for Cooperative Extension, she taught every grade from pre-kindergarten to 8th grade in public school, and she was also a campus administrator before transitioning to teaching higher education. She's presently working towards perfecting her craft as a program evaluator. She's a member of the American Evaluation Association, and her dissertation is a development and validation of an instrument to measure the quality of out-of-school time programs. Her webinar today is entitled From Logic Models to Impact Reporting, the Importance of Backwards Design in Program Planning. So please join me in welcoming Joaquina. And Joaquina, thank you so much for presenting today. We definitely appreciate you sharing your expertise.
Thank you for having me. For this training, you will need paper, writing tool, and a copy of the National 4-H Outcomes and Indicators. To access a copy of the National 4-H Outcomes and Indicators, just Google National 4-H Outcomes and Indicators, and it will be the first result that you will see. But it's important that you have a copy of this so that you can follow along where you are remotely. Now, oftentimes we begin and we say, I have this wonderful idea for a program for 4-H. I want to do this. I think this will be so amazing. But as we get started, we get a little confused and we don't know what steps to take next. So hopefully by the end of today's presentation, you will be leaping for joy because you have realized how to begin your programming process so that it can be aligned to all the outcomes you need to show impact on at the end of the year. Backward design is a pivotal to the success of all facets of educational program, design, delivery, and evaluation. The purpose of this webinar is to provide opportunities for you, extension professionals, to understand how and why backward design is key to the construction of effective programming. This presentation will allow you to gain an awareness of the components of a logic model, the sequence of creating valuable logic models using the backward design framework, and reporting the impact of a program using the backward design framework. Backward design, also referred to as backward mapping or backward planning, is a term coined in the education sector to describe determining the intended outcomes and goals of an educational program before planning the activities and evaluation of the program. In understanding by design, a framework is presented to provide a construct for instructional planning in regards to enhancing learning and designing curriculum and programs with the end in mind. The framework occurs in 3 stages. Stage 1, identify desired results. This involves establishing the plan's overall goals and outcomes in the beginning to guide the instructional plan's evaluation and activities. This plan also outlines how the data will be reported and to whom. In the case of extension services, the outcomes will be listed in the plan of work for each department. A few guiding questions are, what are the established goals? What big ideas do we want our target audience to understand? And what knowledge and skills need to be acquired? Stage 2, determine acceptable evidence. This encourages the instructional planners to consider the evaluation or the assessment of the overall goals and intended outcomes to determine the impact of educational lessons. In this stage, you would develop an evaluation plan to assess whether the outcomes have been met through extension programming. A few guiding questions are, what is sufficient and telling evidence of knowledge, behavioral, and/or societal changes? Using the goals and outcomes, what tasks should be implemented? What criteria will be used to assess changes in knowledge, behavior, and/or society? And will the assessment reveal and distinguish those changes? Stage 3, plan learning experiences and instruction. This is the stage the instructional planner decides which activities and resources will be implemented in the sequence. This is where you would add events and products in the output section of the logic model. For this stage, there is only one important guiding question. What instructional strategies and learning activities are needed to achieve the results identified in stage 1 and reflected in the assessment evidence specified in stage 2? Now we're going to work together to go through stages 1, 2, and 3 using the National 4-H Science Logic Model and the National 4-H and Youth Development Outcomes and Indicators. This is the logic model I use to teach backward mapping. It is a logic model table template from the University of Wisconsin Extension Services. For today's presentation, I would like for you to download the template. If you Google University of Wisconsin Logic Model, the first result that you will see is Logic Model, Program Development and Evaluation. Once you click the first result, click where it says Examples, Templates, Bibliography. Under Logic Model Templates, select Logic Model Table Template Word, and you will be able to type into the logic model that is already created for you. Or you could draw one like I did. I know it's bad. I'm just glad I can't hear you laughing. Again, if you Google University of Wisconsin Logic Model, the first result that you will see is Logic Models, Program Development and Extension. Once you click the first result, click where it says Examples, Templates, Bibliography. Under Logic Model Templates, select Logic Model Table Template Word, and you will be able to type into the Logic Model template that is already created for you. I always add a section for an evaluation plan, and in a little while, you will see why. I will give you a few moments to either download a template from the University of Wisconsin's website or to draw one out. Please type the word ready in the chat box so I will know when to move on. As you can see, I already entered my inputs. My inputs never really change. Everything we do in extension services should either be research or evidence-based, which means we are conducting programs on what has already been studied and applied for best practices. I often need the support of my coworkers and the leadership of our college to complete the mission mandates of 4-H. Also, the plan of work for our departments should guide everything we do in providing programming in our states and counties or parishes. So it is a must that we include the plan of work in our outputs. If you do not know about your plan of work, either research your extension website or ask your director. The next 3 bullets are staples for me as well. We all need time, money, and collaborative partnerships to get our work done. I'm going to use the National 4-H Science Logic Model created as an example of how to create logic models for 4-H programming. When we look at logic models, we tend to look at it from left to right. However, in constructing a logic model using the backward mapping framework, we must always start with the end in mind. So I typically create the logic models in the following order. I create the situation first. This provides relevance of my programming. This section is crafted to state why the program is relevant to extension programming based on identified state and/or county needs. Next, I select my outcomes. In many cases, this can come directly from the plan of work designed specifically for your state's extension program. It is important to become familiar with the plan of work because this is what we will report our program and impact to continue our funding from INFA. Third, I create a small section in the very bottom of the logic model for a brief evaluation plan. Most of the surveys we use in the state of Texas, and I imagine almost everywhere, are questionnaire surveys, which are quantitative measurements. As Julie Hudeman, the coordinator of Extension Strategic Initiatives for Purdue Extension, said in her e-extension presentation on giving programs focus for evaluation, we must conduct pre and post-test evaluations to show some form of impact, since we typically do not conduct true experiments for measuring impacts. After you have created an evaluation plan for your program, you can then align the activities or educational lessons you conduct directly to your evaluation plan. When you design your logic model using the backward mapping framework, you then intentionally align all facets of your programming directly to the outcomes we must report in the plan of work. This will make it easier for you to report the impact of your program at the end of the year. Once you have your situation in place, outcomes and activities, you can easily create your output participation and your inputs. Now we're going to create our own logic models. For this lesson, we're going to begin with the situation. This situation came directly from a situation written in my department's plan of work, as it is referenced here. Again, the situation provides the relevance of the program. Now, this particular program is for a summer camp that we do each year called Youth Leadership Laboratory. The situation is there is a gap between the total number of jobs available in STEM and agriculture and the people prepared to work in STEM and agriculture fields. In order to meet the agricultural demands of the future, more people need to be trained to work in STEM, including leadership positions. And as you can see, I always cite where I get this information from. That also adds relevance to my programming. Now we're going to implement stage 1 of the backward mapping framework. In this stage, we identify the desired results. Now ask yourself, where would we find the desired results? In this case, your outputs can come from the plan of work. This outcome was created by our regional program leader for my unit's plans program. This outcome not only tells us what should be reported at the end of the year, but where it would go along the spectrum of outcomes. This particular outcome is the percentage to increase in limited resource youth more likely to pursue enrollment in post-secondary education. This came out of our plan of work for the current year, and it was plan program number 14, Life Skills for Youth, outcome number 7. Again, I always cite where I get this information from so that it can add relevance to my programming, and I'm ensured that I am addressing outcomes that will be reported in our plan of work outcomes report. Stage 2. At this stage, we would create an evaluation plan measure if the outcomes were met. We will use the National 4-H and Youth Development Outcomes and Indicators to select our question items. If you have not already done so, please use this time to Google 4-H Outcomes and Indicators. The Outcomes and Indicators provide question items for citizenship, science, healthy living, and universal areas. Each category is then broken into 2 sections, grades 4 through 7 and grades 8 through 12. The program we are creating a logic model for is 4-H participants in grades 8 through 12. 8th through 10th, I'm sorry. For an example, when creating your survey, you could write the indicators as a result of experiences in 4-H program or projects, I am comfortable making my own decisions. For this particular activity, first determine the method to measure the impact of your program. Will it be qualitative, quantitative, or mixed methods, depending on whether your evaluation is a questionnaire survey, focus group, or interview. Keep in mind the level of assessment, county, state, or national level. This will also help you determine what method you should use for your assessments. Also, the indicators provided here are used in quantitative assessments. Next, how often will this assessment be used? Will it be a pre and post-test measurement? If so, we need to consider that when we're crafting our evaluation plan. Then, how many domains should this assessment have? How many question items per domain? For each outcome, you will need at least 5 to 6 question items to determine if there was an impact. So I suggest limiting your outcomes to no more than 2. For this training, we will need to create a pre-test, post-test format to measure our evaluations. Using the outcomes and indicators sheet, which national 4-H indicators could we use to measure if this outcome was met? To answer this question, please type the category and the item number in the chat box. And as you type your outcomes and indicators information, I will say them out loud. Restate the question. Sure. Using the outcomes and indicators sheet, which national 4-H indicators could we use to measure if this outcome was met? Now, what you would do, and I guess I'll go through this with you. Here's my national 4-H outcomes and indicators sheet. Now, if to measure if there's a percentage increase in the limited resource youth more likely to pursue enrollment in post-secondary education, I would have to ask myself, can I use any of the outcomes and indicators provided by National 4-H? If so, which ones could I use to address this particular outcome? Oh, great. Demographics would be needed first. The demographics are youth in grades 8 through 10th grade. Also, there will be youth from all over the state of Texas in both rural and urban areas. Someone said science 8 through 12, number 7. Let's see. I would like to have a job related to science. Thank you, Trey. That's a good one. Sandra said the same thing. I would like to have a job related to science. Are there any other ones that we could possibly use? Universal 27. I have talents I can offer to others. You know what? I never even considered that one. So that's a very good one, Aaron. Thank you. Are there any more? Well, as you can see in this case, with this particular outcome, universal number 2, which number 2? Is it 8 through 12? Well, they're the same. I set goals for myself. That's a good one. That's a really good one. I have a plan for reaching my goals. That's universal number 10. Good job, Andrea. Thank you. Now, what I've discovered in crafting question items is that all the time our questions and items that's here provided by the National 4-H, they may not align to the outcomes that are in our plan of work that we must report to. So in this case, we have to use other question items or develop specific question items that we can use to address this particular impact. Now, Aaron also said, have the CM 2.0 College and Career Survey been mapped to outcomes and indicators? That is a very good question. I don't know that. And that's a question that I will have to research to find more about. So I'm definitely going to make a note of that myself so that I can research and see, has it been mapped? And if not, maybe this is that area of improvement for our National 4-H indicators for the next update. Okay, next. Now we connect our link our evaluation plan to the activities. Based on the indicators we discussed when creating the evaluation plan, what type of activities or educational lessons should we provide? Please type your response in the chat box. Based on this outcome, what type of educational lessons could we provide to our participants during the summer program? But for the one that says, I would like to have a job related to science, we would definitely need an educational lesson on science careers. For the, I have a plan for reaching my goals, I believe that's universal number 10. We would have to have give the participants an opportunity for goal setting, where they can map out some goals and understand how to create SMART goals that are relevant and have a timetable aligned to them. Sandra said, in addition to some hands-on experiences, youth will need opportunity to reflect on their future plans. Exactly. In order to know what their goals are, they have to have an opportunity to just think about what they may want to do. Robbie Morrison said, offer experts in the field of science as presenters and to do activities. Paula Davis said, to tour where we would meet experts. Exactly, that's a big part of this. Give them that exposure that they need to see these are the type of fields you would go into, and this is what it would look like when you get there. Aaron said, for universal number 27, I have talents, give participants an opportunity to explore multiple careers, skills, ability in STEM. Exactly. These are all practical educational activities that we can do to expose our students to careers that will help them to consider enrolling into post-secondary education. Carla said, introduce youth to individuals who grew up with limited resources. Let them share their goals. That is a great point, Carla, because it would give those youth an opportunity to realize that if they can do it, I can do it too. So I think that is an excellent way that we can get our kids involved with educational lessons that would actually meet the outcome that we must report to. Once you have completed all 3 stages of backward mapping, you will then have an outline to guide your program planning. The only thing left to do after the plan is implemented is to craft your impact statement based on the results of the programming. Are there any questions regarding backward design and program planning? Paula Davis says, and Georgia 4-H also has some excellent evaluation tools. Paula, could you talk to us about that for a second?
Okay. Georgia, they have a lot of different templates. They also have spreadsheet that will calculate your questionnaires for data tabulation and instructions on how to use it. It's just got a lot of resources there on the link that I put in the chat box.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions or comments or things they would like to add about how we can incorporate backward mapping into our program planning process? Okay, well, this has been much quicker than we planned, which I hope is a bonus for y'all. So I'm going to turn this back over to Jeffrey, and I would like to thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much, Joaquina. We appreciate you sharing your expertise with us. This has been awesome. I know that as the events coordinator here in Georgia, I mean, almost my entire job is planning. So hearing how other people are doing it is great. And I know that I'll definitely implement some backwards design in my programming here in Georgia. So just to remind everybody, this is a recorded presentation, which is extremely helpful because it'll have us give us the opportunity to go back and review these resources again and to be able to share it with those that weren't able to join us today. You're going to get a short evaluation about today's webinar in the next day or two. So when that pops up in your email, please take a few minutes to provide some feedback as we continue to move forward with our virtual professional development series. Again, if you think of anything after we close our webinar, if you have any questions, I know that Joaquina will be happy to field those questions via email, and we can share that contact information with you. And we do host these webinars on the third Wednesday of every month at 1 o'clock. So you'll soon see some information about our March webinar, so be on the lookout for that in your email. And again, we just appreciate you joining us for our first webinar of the year, and we look forward to seeing everybody next month. Have a great afternoon or a great rest of your morning.